evidence for early human activity on the site is provided by worked flint tools dating to the Neolithic period, around 3500 to 2000 BC. There is also some evidence for early Bronze Age burial mounds and funerary material from the lower part of the crag, dated to around 2000 to 1500 BC, suggesting that it had ritual significance. Archaeological excavation demonstrated that beneath the medieval outer gatehouse and curtain wall were a series of earthwork defences dating to the later Bronze Age and the Iron Age, between around 900 BC to 40 AD. The first later Bronze Age fortification comprised a simple bank at the base of the crag, probably with a wooden palisade. Excavated objects such as moulds and crucibles for smelting indicate that Beeston was a major metalworking centre. Among the most significant are two copper alloy socketed axes that had seemingly been deliberately buried beneath the earthwork bank. They almost certainly represent a votive offering or were used for ritual purposes. During the early Iron Age, around 650 to 450 BC, the existing bank was enlarged and given an external ditch to create a larger defended enclosure, or hill fort. An excavated cache of slingshot near the castle's outer gatehouse suggests that the entrance was on the same site. In the later Iron Age, around 450 BC to 40 AD, a substantial earthwork bank, strengthened with stone rubble and topped with a wooden palisade, was built. Evidence from preserved plant remains suggests that at the same site, greater provisions was made within the enclosure for storing and the processing of crops. Quantities of pottery, which were probably used to transport salt since large rock salt deposits lie beneath the eastern half of Cheshire, also suggest that Beeston was part of a regional trading network. The hill fort seems to have been abandoned at the end of the Iron Age. Roman pottery has been recovered from the base of the hill, but there is little other evidence for Roman occupation. During the barren civil war of King John's reign, Ranulph, Earl of Chester, was a staunch supporter of the royal cause, and for that he received titles, castles, and land across England in return for his loyalty. In 1218, after Henry III succeeded to the throne, Ranulph left England to take part in the Fifth Crusade. He returned in 1220 to find the king's justiciar, Herbert de Burgh, confiscating lands from other men who had enriched themselves in the previous decade. Ranulph clearly felt the need to guarantee his political position, and at some point in the 1220s began work on Beeston Castle. Ranulph died in 1232, and Beeston, together with the earldom of Chester, was granted to Ranulph's nephew, John le Scot. On John's death in 1237, Henry III seized the Earl's estates, including Beeston. There are no documentary records of building expenses before the Crown took possession, but the amount spent on works in the 1240s, mostly connected with the royal campaign against Wales in 1245, suggest that the castle was incomplete before this date. Understanding what exactly was built at Beeston at this time is not easy, as many payments in royal records also refer to concurrent works at other castles. For example, in 1241 to 1242, £410, 12 denarius, around £700,000 in today's money, was spent on repairing and fortifying Beeston and Rutland. In 1245, a total of £242, 17 shillings and 10.5 denarius, almost £500,000 in today's money, was spent on finishing the two turrets, which might refer to the completion of the defences in the outer ward. Even after this programme of works, Beeston probably never received the full suite of domestic buildings. Instead, all the accommodation and services were concentrated in the gatehouses and curtain wall towers. In 1254, Henry III granted Beeston and the earldom of Chester to his son, the future Edward I, and so Cheshire became part of the royal lands. Throughout the late Middle Ages, Beeston was overshadowed in importance by the castle at Chester, which was the base for the English military expeditions against the Welsh. Intermittent payments for knights and sergeants and references to prisoners suggest that it may have functioned as a secure place in which to retain hostages. Edward I visited the castle in 1264, for example, with prisoners taken from the Battle of Evesham. The early 14th century saw a major programme of rebuilding. Between September 1303 and September 1304, a total of £109, 2 shillings and 4.5 denarius was spent on the works, indicating more than routine maintenance, around £143,000 in today's money. The principal work took place in the inner ward, where 3 towers were raised and crenellated, quote, because they formerly had high wooden surfaces and now they are made level, evidence that during the 13th century they had not been finished off in stone. Much expense must have been taken up by the building of the new bridge, together with a massive stone wall before the said bridge as a support. Repairs were made to the gate in the outer ward in 1305 and to houses and towers in 1312 and 1313. In 1333, it was reported in a survey that the castle was well and surely sited on a rocky eminence and very well enclosed, and that no more repairs were necessary. Porters were still recorded at the castle in the 15th century, but the antiquarian John Leland wrote that the castle was in ruinous state in around 1540 AD. In 1602, the manor of Peckforton, which included Beeston, was sold to a local gentleman named Hugh Beeston. Following the outbreak of the Civil War in 1642, Beeston's location was in the centre of Cheshire and made valuable to both the supporters of King Charles and the parliamentarians. In February 1643, a parliamentarian garrison of between 200 and 300 men was installed in the castle, but defences were in a poor state of repair and gaps in the curtain wall had to be filled with earth. In the early hours of the 13th of December 1643, the royalist captain Thomas Sandford and 8 men entered the castle and took control of the inner ward, the king's men probably getting in from the north side of the outer ward and then scrambling to the top of the crag. With more royalists at the gate, the castle was surrendered and the reduced parliamentary garrison was allowed to leave the following day. In November 1644, the Parliament siege of Chester made it necessary to remove the potential threat of Beeston's royalist garrison. Parliament's troops seized cattle from the surrounding area, fought off royalist attempts at recovery, and enforced a blockade by raising siege works in front of the outer ward. When the royalists destroyed them in the early summer of 1645, the parliamentarians responded by building a fort for 100 men within musket shot of the gate. With the defeat of the king at the Battle of Rowton Heath, near Chester, on the 24th of September 1645, there was little point in royalists continuing to hold out Beeston, and they surrendered on November the 15th. Following the surrender, the siege works were dismantled and Beeston was ordered to be slighted, meaning that it was made indefensible by destroying parts of the walls and towers. I hope you've enjoyed this narrated history of Beeston Castle, and a big thanks to English Heritage for providing the information and the dates. Feel free to like and subscribe for more episodes of history you didn't know about.